Okay. So I'm very happy to present you what we have in Switzerland. So to begin with, so practically the talk is about building up the CLARIN-CH training program. It's very important training. So once we have the infrastructure, once we have the data, we need to make sure that people know how to use the infrastructure and the tools and how to work on the data. So practically, this is something that we have been focusing on in Switzerland for the last 2 years and will continue to work on it. Before that, I only wanted to very briefly explain to you what we have in Switzerland, because we joined only very recently. And also the consortium that we have, it's also quite young. So the consortium that you see constituted of the universities and institutions that you see here on this slide was built in 2020. So it's pretty young, only 5 years. We then joined as observers for during 23 and 24, and finally members since this year, May 25. And the mission that we gave ourselves was to join the European CLARIN community, and but also to have a perspective on the national situation, so to build an active, impactful and sustainable national network that is dedicated to open science and fair principles. So practically, we're really wanting to also consolidate more and more the scientific community, the infrastructure that we have in Switzerland, and to better support the scientific community. As a consortium, we're practically working with a few institutions, what we like to call the CLARIN-CH ecosystem, because we all work together. And this ecosystem is built by the consortium that you saw before. These institutions, there is a CLARIN-CH board. Each institution has a representative in the board, and we meet twice a year to discuss, exchange, align. Then the CLARIN-CH coordination office that I'm heading as national coordinator. And then we have 3 infrastructure, so the linguistic research infrastructure from the University of Zurich, who is providing services and tools and corpus platforms. Then the Digital Discourse Lab from the Zurich University of Applied Sciences, who is also providing corpus platforms and tools. And the National Repository, Language Repository of Switzerland, LARS, which is a fair compliant repository, also recently received the Core Trust Seal certification. And LIRI with LARS together have applied for the CLARIN B certification, which is ongoing process. Okay, and practically, in order to decide in what direction we want to go and what we want to have in Switzerland, what we did 3 years ago, 2022, we had a survey at the national level to assess researchers' needs, because we really wanted to provide something that is really useful to researchers to identify their needs, so to get to know our community and user needs. We had 92 participants from all Swiss higher education institutions. And what I want to show you here is the answers to the question, what are the specific needs of your discipline that you would like to draw our attention to. And I don't know if you can see very well here. So practically, what I want maybe to signal is, for instance, sensitive data, host linguistic data, workshops, networking, webinars, access to corpus data, provide training. So practically, we use all these answers to have a user-driven offer that you can see here on this graph. What we have is national working groups in which foster exchange and collaboration between people on specific topics. We now have a documentation platform on the CLARIN-CH website where people can find the information they need, together with a help desk that comes from the CLARIN-CH office. We also put forward the services, different sorts of services for researchers provided by LIRI, so following the data life cycle. We also identified some sort of service which we called it CLARIN-CH verification pipeline. This is practically support that we provide to researchers who have data and try to or need to increase the fairness of that data or that corpora and don't know exactly how to do it. So we have someone who goes with them, our training office, technical officer, which accompanies them in the process of getting their data in a fair status. And then finally, training and education, and we will focus today on this training and education. Okay, so we have a series of axes of action. So, of course, the first one is the needs assessment to identify the gaps for open research data and natural language processing competencies. In order to have evidence-based foundation for a training program. The second one is stakeholder collaboration. In Switzerland, we have a very particular situation is that we have no national funding instrument from the government for research infrastructure. So everything has to come from the institutions themselves. Even for CLARIN-CH itself, it's co-funded by the participating institutions. There's no federal funding. So we need to make something out of what we already have. So this involves, of course, or implies or presupposes that we need to have a very strong stakeholder and partner collaboration. So to engage researchers and training providers in order to co-develop tailored formats that function in different contexts. And of course, to ensure alignment with open science and fair priorities. The third one is the training events, working groups, webinars, workshops, on-site and online formats in order to foster interdisciplinary exchange. Fourth one is to create open education resources. This is the trend now, especially with the Fair by Design methodology developed by the Skills for EOS project. So training or resources that cover the data life cycle, so from collection until data publication and archiving. And these resources are modular, reusable, and adaptable. And finally, the long-term accessibility and compatibility with CLARIN, of course, because we want to have our resources also findable in the bigger CLARIN community. Our resources are published via Zenodo and in order to ensure sustainability and transparency. And for a broader findability, I'm also planning to register them in the SSH Open Marketplace, which is this European discovery platform for different sorts of resources coming from the SSH, so social sciences and humanities area. So how we implemented or started to implement this training program. So practically, as I said, without any specific funding for this, we had to use the framework of existing actions that we already have. The first one is in the framework of CLARIN-CH working groups, and then I will present these 2024 series of webinars that we had. Then in the framework of infrastructure-focused open research data projects, this is small projects that we also managed to have in the last years through the Swiss Open Research Data Program. So this is, and thanks to these two projects, we had the CLARIN-CH Spring 2025 series of training sessions that I will explain just a bit later. And this is more for the future in the framework of an exploratory open research data project that we also got this year. It's a small project, so a one-year project, which will start in January, which is called language data across disciplines. So roughly the idea is to go beyond linguistics or beyond the typical disciplines and to reach out to other disciplines that also use language data, but to answer their own research questions. So practically, our training program supports researchers across linguistics and, of course, non-linguistic domains. Okay, I will now explain a bit. How much time do I have? Where? 6? Okay, so I have to rush. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to show is the webinars that we organized in the framework of a working group called Management of Personal and Sensitive Data, Ethical and Legal Issues for Linguistic Data. This working group was launched in 2023. After a kickoff with keynotes and open Q&A, we decided to organize during 1 year a monthly webinar focusing on various legal and technical aspects. And the outputs of these working groups were a series of frequently asked questions, which we then published on the documentation platform, and also recordings of the webinars and case studies. All the webinars are now published on the Zenodo CLARIN-CH community, where people can watch the recording. The structure of the webinar was 30 minutes presentation by an expert from the area and 30 minutes of answering people's questions with respect to those topics. So I will not go into all the details here, but practically each of the webinars is published individually, as you can see here, the DOI. And also we made what you saw here, a presentation of the entire framework and the entire idea behind of these webinars, which is also a standalone publication on Zenodo. The second one, the training sessions that took place this spring 2025, so it's pretty recent. The focus was to explore Swiss language resources and tools. This series was conceptualized from the start as a series and follows the Fair by Design principle. So the structure of the session was introduction, followed by a hands-on part or a demo, and then finally a Q&A. I think they had something like 1.5 hours duration. It was bi-weekly online sessions that took place with the focus on aspects like corpus querying, Swiss media data that we have, multimodal data, data publication and archiving. And they were all delivered by CLARIN-CH partners that I showed you in the beginning in this ecosystem. As before, we have a publication on Zenodo that explains the entire series with a different focus on different aspects. And then also each individual training series is published with the recording, the slides that can be reused by someone if they want to. On Zenodo here, you can see a few examples, but practically they all focus on different infrastructure components and tools that we have in Switzerland. And we also wanted to have a session on the last one on reusing data for teaching and secondary analysis. The third that I wanted to explain today is this exploratory project that will start in January. Practically, the rationale behind it is that language data, particularly large data sets, play a critical role in research across a wide range of disciplines like medicine, history and political sciences, theology, financial and business communication, translation, terminology, and interpretation, language education. Corpus-based studies have become a valuable tool for or resource for analyzing these specialized language in these domains. If you take, for instance, the patient-doctor communication in medicine or psychology. In recent years, however, corpus-based research has become increasingly regulated, and we, as a community, as a linguist, main linguist, we know these things, but people from other disciplines, they don't know them that much. And this regulation was also driven by the growing positive pressure to implement open research data practices, fair and GDPR compliance, or as we have in Switzerland, the national law, data protection law. And finally, a more structured inventory of knowledge and training in open research data practices related to language data is particularly urgent, especially in disciplines outside linguistics. And what the objectives that we formulated for this project was to assess and address the need of the for targeted skills and knowledge necessary to work effectively with language data across these different diverse disciplines. The second was to facilitate greater engagement with open research data practices, to provide an inventory of open research data knowledge and training sessions to the members of the community. What we had also for this project was an actual written interest from 10 disciplines and 10 researchers from Switzerland, from different institutions, who manifested in writing their interest of participating in the project to give access to their community to answer the questions or the interviews and the survey that we want to plan in order to collect information about this or open research data knowledge, so that we can then create targeted training sessions to these communities, disciplinary communities. So practically, the project will promote the exchange of knowledge, identify shared challenges, and build a network of researchers and data stewards. So in this project, we also wanted to involve data stewards. This is something that we start to have in Switzerland since 2 years ago, more or less, a year and a half. Each institution is investing in having a local data steward who is there to support the local scientific community. Of course, they are persons, so they all have their own background, so they're not able to know all the practices and the standards and from all disciplines. So we also want to make sure that these data stewards from the different institutions know what are the best practices that we have in our community, and also to create these training sessions together with them, so that we also can reuse their time and expertise for this training program that we have in mind. Okay, to conclude, so practically what we would like to have, or starting to have, is a training program that fosters open research data and open science. It is based on the strategic access, so needs assessment is very important to propose something that is actually that actually answers researchers' needs. Stakeholder collaboration, organization of training events, co-development of open research, open educational resources, and making sure that these resources have long-term accessibility. We want to expand from linguistics to other disciplines using language data. For the future, what I would very much like to have is, for instance, a series of training sessions on the CLARIN infrastructure, both central services and services provided by the countries, the member countries, including B and K centers. Why I say this? Because I observe that people in Switzerland, even if we are doing a lot for CLARIN or to disseminate information of CLARIN, they still don't use it that much, the CLARIN infrastructure. So one of the reasons is the fact that they don't know exactly what's out there. I mean, very specifically, not just in general. So I would really want to be able to offer this to the community. And finally, training opportunities co-organized with data stewards and open science officers from the institutions participating in CLARIN-CH. As I said, it's very important because they are like the first local entry point or contact point that researchers have at the institutional level before getting at the national level, for instance, to get to receive advice or help. Thank you. And yes, I'm here open for questions. I forgot to mention that my co-author, Joanna, she's going to practically work on this LADAD project that will start in January.
Thank you very much for this presentation. It is our experience from several years back already that especially researchers from outside of linguistics or computational linguistics do not know what they need, because they simply don't know what is there and what is feasible and what is realistic. And so you already have to train them first to give them a glimpse of what is feasible, or maybe not possible yet, but let's say worth trying, and what is completely out of the question because it's too. And we often got requests that at that time we could not do at all, and that gave a lot of disappointment to the.
Yes.
So it's also a question of once you tell them, expectation management.
Yeah, that's very true. We also observe it was not with for training, but it was for infrastructure development for a corpus platform that we have. with a colleague from Università della Svizzera Italiana who works with multimodal interactional data with very complex annotation layers. And they wanted to reuse the corpus platform that the University of Zurich has in order to have an interface or an instance that actually works for their type of data. That's still an ongoing process, but it's quite complex when you need to move from strictly quantitative approach that we normally use to more qualitative with these complex layered annotations. So it's a long process. Yes, but thank you for signaling that the expectation management aspect. Thank you.
I have a question. When you do your, you started off with a questionnaire, sending it around. I can imagine that the way you ask the questions influence the answers, a bit similar to what Jan said. If you don't know, you don't know what you. So how did you address that?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was also in the start. So in 2022, I started to work for Clarin 2021. So I was still learning the things by myself. So some of the questions, indeed, people said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's useful because I don't know what's out there."
Yeah.
So for me, that was already an answer, saying that people need to know what's out there so that they know if they can use it or not, or why they don't use it. Well, just because I don't know that it exists. So I've been trying until now to disseminate, as I said, information about what Clarin, for instance, has to offer in terms of infrastructure and resources. With a series of information sessions. So I visited practically, that was 22, 23, each institution with an information session on site to present in a very detailed manner and to answer people's questions. That was helpful. And now but still not helpful enough for them to actually use the infrastructure, so that we can also see then in publications that they report that they've used this or that infrastructure component available in Clarin. So this is why I think that the next step is actually to actually have these training sessions in a more targeted manner on specific selected tools or resources for people to get to know them much better.
Maybe a suggestion of what we are trying to do now is first ask a number of researchers, like, what kind of needs do you have with your data? What would you want with your data? And then try to match this with existing tools.
Yes.
Just suggestion. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.